again. This is Chicken Talk Radio Live on a very special Sunday afternoon, Sunday night, whatever you want to call it, because it's still daytime out here, so call it afternoon, man. It's your boy True Knowledge, Knowledge without the D, Knowledge is power, knowledge is me. We got our host, multi-platinum producer Ray Tracks, who will probably be popping in a little bit later on. We got G-Man Rock 410. We got the whole gang. Shout out and special thanks to Hoodcelebsworldwide and Trapper G. Also, thank you to Who the LK and Warsaws Radio Live and our sponsors, Jerk Sauce, 25 West Mercury Boulevard, Hampton, Virginia, 23669. Some of the best Jamaican food on this side of the water and on the East Coast, man. And on top of that, they got special things going on every night, Monday through Sunday, parties, open mic night, by the sounds of DJ Sniper and DJ Rick, man. Once again, shout out Jerk Sauce, 25 West Mercury Boulevard, Hampton, Virginia, 23669. And we have a part two interview with the Bitcoin evangelist himself. I call him Bitcoin Guru. And he does a lot more stuff that we're going to talk about today, man. But Mr. Brian DeMint is back in the building. How are you doing today? Happy belated Father's Day to you, too.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And no, it's good to be back. You guys were one of the first podcasts that I did on this book tour when I was right before we launched the book. And so you guys kind of helped get it kicked off and everything. And it's been strong. I mean, we've started out strong, coming out of the gate swinging with this book and just spreading the word. And it's been good, man. Yeah. Been busy, but just like you, busy, but it's good.
All right, so what's been going on with you lately, man? Since the last one, I know last interview we was talking everything about the beginning of Bitcoin, how to watch out for scams with people who are scamming with Bitcoin, the process of starting it. What's been going on since then, man? Give us a little rundown.
Well, man, the markets have been crazy. So for anybody that pays attention to the stock market or bond market or crypto market, any of this stuff, everything's down. People are fearful. Gas prices are high. Gas prices have been high for a while now. So I don't think that's new. But the Federal Reserve, our country's central bank, has changed some of their policies. And I mean, we can get into that, but that's actually a lot of what the book's about. So I wrote this book. I started writing it last year when people weren't talking as much about Federal Reserve policies and stuff like that, because that was just it wasn't in the public eye what the central bank was doing. But for those of us that study the banking systems and how our money works, we kind of saw these things coming. So we knew that there was going to be some tightening. People were going to feel a little tight in their pocketbooks and that sort of thing. So this isn't uncommon, but as investors. And so that's one of the things you got to be willing to weather the storm. There's this brilliant quote. I quoted in my book. It's by this famous investor. But he says, you need to buy when there's blood in the streets. The time to invest isn't when everybody's happy and things are feeling good. That's when things get expensive. So this is the time when it's kind of like put up or shut up. If you're a serious investor, if you're somebody that's serious about building wealth, about passing on wealth to the next generation and building something for your family, building a dynasty, these are the times when you start. And it doesn't mean you have to start crazy with it. You don't have to take every dime you have and put it into investments like Bitcoin and stuff like that. But this is the time to start if you haven't started yet, or if you've been doing it, it's not the time to panic. When everybody else is panicking, that's the time to be bold and be a smart investor. And so that's really where we're at right now. When we were talking last time, times were feeling a little bit better. It wasn't that long ago. This is the crazy thing. This wasn't that long ago that we talked, but people are starting to panic a little bit more. They're worried that we're going to have a recession and things like that. That stuff can be scary to people, but that as an investor, these are the times that we look for to make the most out of them.
All right, so you were saying something about the policy. Go ahead and get into that. Just so if anybody that actually studies stuff like that and actually watches the market and looks at stuff like that, they might not know, or some people might just want to know just for GP, good principles, just so they're be on their P's and Q's. But tell us about this policy change that you say is going on right now.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, brother. So in the simplest way to explain it is just that the Federal Reserve, our country's central bank, and I think we might have touched on this last time, but this is a really important point to consider. Our central bank is called the Federal Reserve. We think of it like it's a government agency. So we think it's run by, our votes and democracy and stuff like that. It's not. It's actually a private company. Most people don't understand that the central bank is its own company. It has shareholders, it has people that own it. So as soon as people realize that for the first time, they're like, oh wow, okay, there's actually a company that controls all the money for all the world, because the US dollar is basically used around the world. It's kind of the world currency. Like, yes, other countries have their own currencies, but there's a lot of countries that everything's based on the US dollar. So this one company kind of decides the monetary policy for the whole world. So it's pretty important to understand that first. But what they also do is they have something called the Fed funds rate. It's basically the interest rate that they get to determine. So all the banks, so your JP Morgans, your Wells Fargo's, your Bank of America's, all of them, their bank. So like, where do banks bank at? Banks bank at the central bank, at the Federal Reserve. So when your bank stores their money somewhere, they store it with the Federal Reserve. And just like you get interest, it's just a little bit of interest, right? But if you have a savings account, you get like 0.01% interest. These banks get an interest rate when they store their money at the Federal Reserve. It's kind of like a safer way for them to store it and stuff like that. So the Fed funds rate is basically how much interest, or basically what the interest rate is for the Federal Reserve. And so when they raise the interest rate, and that's been the big change, is the Federal Reserve for like the last 10 years has had a 0% interest rate. They basically said, hey, after the Great Recession in 2008, 2009, we want to stimulate the economy. And so we're going to allow people, when they borrow money, we're going to charge banks 0% interest. Basically, the Federal Reserve was loaning money out to banks, and they weren't charging the banks any interest on that. So when you and I get a loan, you get a car loan or something like that, it might be 7% interest, 8% interest, it might be 20% interest, who knows? We get an interest rate, right? Well, when banks borrow, they borrow from the Federal Reserve at 0%. That's been the case for the last 10 years. And so when your bank then loans you money for a car, a house, a credit card, or whatever it is, they got to borrow that money at 0%. And then they're charging you, say, 18% interest on your credit card. Well, that means the bank's making 18% interest off. They're making 18% profit off of this transaction because they have no cost at the Federal Reserve, and they're charging you 18%. So now what happened this last month or last few months, the Federal Reserve, for the first time in 10 years, is going from 0% interest to about 0.5% interest. And everybody's freaking out. And now this is kind of the crazy thing. 0.5% interest isn't that big of a bump, but the mainstream news organizations, kind of the mainstream narrative is that this is a big deal. This is the biggest, they say it's the biggest interest rate increase in 30 years. And that sounds scary when you say it like that. This is the biggest interest increase in 30 years. Well, guess what? We've had historically low interest for a really long time. So for it to go up by a little bit is not that big of a deal. But like we've seen in the last few years, sometimes you can get people to panic just by, a few crazy headlines and things like that. So all that to say, the Federal Reserve bumped up interest rates a little bit. So now when banks borrow money, they are going to charge you, the consumer, a little bit more money on interest. And so that has all sorts of implications for companies that need to borrow money and supply chains and stuff like that. So that's why people were kind of freaking out. But that's kind of the shotgun blast about federal policy.
Okay, all right. Because other than that, because I honestly didn't know that, and I tend to watch the news and watch the stock markets and read up on that a lot, and I guess that's something new for me to know and for everybody else to know. But the way it seems like online, this Bitcoin evangelist book is booming everywhere. When I say everywhere, everywhere, I see all the people sending you their Instagram stories, showing you the love. How does it feel to know that this book is becoming a success and probably on its way to becoming bigger than probably what you imagined it to be?
That you're absolutely right. Because when I set out, I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. I've done some different things and had success in business, but I'm a first time author. And so I've consulted for companies. I knew the information I had is good. But I didn't know how to get a book out there, right? Like I'm gonna write this book. I'm gonna try and make it the best book I can. But even if you make something good, you can make a good, you guys are doing music. You guys are content creators yourselves. You can create something really good, and that doesn't mean it's going to sell, And so there's this whole other marketing, and I was talking to Ray about this the other day. Ray Trax and me go back and forth a lot, and he
Yes, sir.
he was telling me, yeah, that's the game. That's the game that you guys are in. It's you create something, you're an artist, you're creating something, but then it's a whole different beast marketing and getting out there. So now that I've started to see people buying the book, people are buying it on Amazon or buying it through the website, or I have merchandise that I sell, like shirts and stuff like that on the website. So people, complete strangers, people from Germany or somewhere in Europe buying my stuff. I don't even know how they heard about it. I mean, maybe they heard about it on your podcast, or maybe they heard about it online, or, there's been some write-ups on it and stuff, but it's been pretty shocking to me to see the response. And what I keep hearing from people is that this information, like we just talked about, the Federal Reserve, this central part of our economy, this thing that makes the whole economy run, people will say things like, I never knew that the Federal Reserve was a private company and they dictate pretty much everything that goes on in our country. And, there's all sorts of things like that throughout this book, where I remember when I was, starting out as an entrepreneur, there are things that I didn't know. And I was like very tied into money and the markets and stuff like that. It's one of those things where people just don't talk about it because it might feel uncomfortable, or just changes the way we look at the world a little bit. But once we have our eyes open to it, it's like, it gives us almost kind of like a cheat code. If we were playing a video game and, we can either play by the rules and play the way everybody else is playing, or we can have a little bit of, extra, like a little extra knowledge that not everybody else has. It gives us an advantage to play the game better. It's a way to advantage ourselves over the way that we used to be. If we don't have knowledge, I mean, your name's True Knowledge. Like, you get this, right? Not everybody gets this though. Knowledge is power.
Yes,
And
I
so
do.
when we equip ourselves with knowledge, when we read and when we listen to podcasts and when we expand our worldview, it gives us an unfair advantage over the rest of the world. But this is the other thing. We have to be willing to act upon that knowledge. A lot of people, they say, oh, I get that. I understand it. But then they're afraid to change the way they do things, or they're afraid to start investing for the first time because it feels scary. And so that there's two parts of it. There's getting the knowledge, and then there's acting on the knowledge. But that's why I think this book's so important, because it's really making the case for people how the system works and how there's a fix for it and how you can benefit from it. And so I think when people see that process, it's a logical next step to say, okay, I need to act according to this.
And be honest with you, Ray's told me everything about this book because he's been reading it in and out. And I'm looking forward to getting my copy because I'll probably read half of it within a day. But besides it being a great book, let everybody know about this contest, this first ever contest to be done. Give them a little bit of info about this contest for everybody who's listening. So don't just go get the book because of the contest. Get the book because the stuff that's inside of the book, the contents, will probably make you richer than the contest will. So tell the people about it, man.
Thanks. That's the perfect tee up, man. You're you're good at this. So yeah, the content, like you said, is the important part. But this contest, it's never been done before, and I'd like to think that everybody just loves my book because they wanted to run out and learn about Bitcoin. But I think some of it might be this hidden wallet contest. And for your listeners that don't know what I'm talking about, it's that I've hidden, and this is the first book ever in history to do this. And that's the cool thing about new technologies. And when we're in a new realm, when we're in a new technology, you get to do things for the first time. So it's like a privilege for me to say I'm the first author to ever do this. But I hid it's a Bitcoin wallet inside of this book. And so if you know anything about Bitcoin, you can buy a whole Bitcoin that's valued at about $21,000 right now, but you can also buy bits and pieces of Bitcoin. So just like the US dollar has pennies, Bitcoin has its smallest unit. It's called a Satoshi. So I put 3.1 million Satoshis. It's about $800 worth of Bitcoin hidden in this book. It's just 12 words. You go through the book. If you read the book, you're going to pick up the words along the way. You kind of have to, look for things that are kind of out of place. But anyways, if you find all 12 words, you can just go download a free Bitcoin wallet. You type in those 12 words. That's basically like the secret passphrase to unlock this treasure trove of Bitcoin. So it's like Willy Wonka's golden ticket. The first person that finds it is going to get to keep it. Nobody's found it yet. The book's been out for, I don't know, 3 weeks, a month or something like that. And nobody's found it yet, but I know I know Ray Trax has got a handful of words. He's maybe a front runner for this thing. I know a couple people that are right around where he's at, 6 or 7 words. But yeah, if you're a reader and you crank through this book, you might find him. You might be able to beat out Ray. So good good luck.
Yeah. Good luck on that because he's going hard for that one, man.
He is.
But man, like man, it's so crazy, man, being able to get to talk to you again, man, because you're a father, you're an author, you're an entrepreneur, businessman. You used to work for Ethereum, and then when I go on your social media page, come to find out you're a cage fighter also. So you're a jack of all trades. Let the people know about that side of you know what I'm saying of your life and where they can actually where they might be able to find some of your old fights set or fights that you have done before.
Yeah, you can go find if you just type my name into YouTube, Brian Dement fight or Brian Dement MMA. You can find some old fights. I think the first one that pops up on YouTube is a fight that I lost. So, so I mean, whatever. If you want to watch that one, that's fine. I whooped the dude's butt for like the first couple of rounds, and then he ends up getting a decision at the end. So I don't know. It was fun. I'm a pretty peaceful guy, but I love martial arts. I love MMA. And so I started training, well over a decade ago, and I'd done Muay Thai, which is kickboxing, so elbows, knees, kicks, punches, all that kind of stuff. And then I started going to an MMA gym where they did, grappling, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, the whole thing, the cage fighting thing. And I thought, oh, I'm like sparring. I had been sparring with these world-class kickboxers, so I didn't know how to wrestle all that much, but I could, I could hang with the best of them when we're throwing hands. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to go do some cage fights. And I'm just going to, if somebody tries to wrestle me, I'm just going to knee him in the face and knock him out. Like, no big deal. I went and did that my first couple of fights. I would whoop the dude on the feet, and then they wouldn't want any more of that. And then they would just take me down. And because I didn't know how to wrestle, there was nothing I could
Yeah.
do. They would just hold me down and just like snuff me out for the rest of the match. And so I'd always lose on points. And so then I was like, I got to learn this wrestling. I got to learn jiu-jitsu. And basically for the last 10 years, I've just been doing, I mean, I still do Muay Thai and kickboxing and MMA and stuff, but I really focus on jiu-jitsu. I love to do jiu-jitsu competitions. I've done like world championship tournaments and stuff like that. It's fun, man. Have you ever done jiu-jitsu before?
No, I actually practice Shaolin Rule. That is karate and kickboxing.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. How long you been doing that for?
Uh, I actually started doing it when I was about 16. I did it up to 18. Got up to a yellow belt. I used to do point fighting competitions. So I
Really?
still got a couple of trophies from doing point fighting. I didn't like point fighting because you couldn't hit them as hard as you want to, and
Right.
if you did, you get disqualified, even if they know the hit is just a great, awesome hit. But nah, yeah. So yeah, I did it, and it taught me a lot of self discipline. And
Hmm.
I believe I preach to everybody to get inside of that lane
Hmm.
with martial arts or any type of being able to defend yourself, because it's not just about defending yourself. It actually helps with mental health more than a lot of people know.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think, yeah, that's one of the things I have to do it, a few times a week just to, like you said, I do a lot of things. I'm an entrepreneur and a dad and an author and all that stuff now. And that's kind of one of those things where there's a few things that keep me grounded and keep me like regimented throughout the week. I think prayer is a big thing for me. Like I just gotta connect with God and make sure that, I'm kind of like, I come back to a center, but then being able to like physically exert yourself. Sometimes we can sit in front of a computer and just be cranking out work or whatever our work is. It can just kind of become repetitive and things like that. So it's good to break it up, especially with something physical. And that's why I love jujitsu, because it's the art of, submission grappling. You can spar 100%. That's what the problem when I did kickboxing was. You could spar, but when you're sparring, you can't just like throw 100% on everything. You can't always try to knock out your partners, because then nobody's going to be wanting to spar with you anymore. And with jiu-jitsu, you can go 100%, right? If you and me are rolling and you choke me out or you choke me, I can just tap out and we start all over. Like we just do another round. Like nobody gets hurt or anything like that, but you get to go 100% and you get to learn how to control another human being without hurting them too. So that's kind of the jiu-jitsu, and I believe in Japanese means the gentle way. So it's a way to, subdue somebody, take them down. If there's a drunk guy at the bar and he's, acting belligerent or something like that, you could go over and you could knock him out, right? But then like, what if he hits his head on the ground and, he dies or gets a concussion or something like that? Like there's all sorts of unintended consequences that come when we start throwing hands and knees and all that. But if you could take him down, hold them on the ground and just kind of keep them under control, like that's a beautiful thing, right? It's a beautiful thing to be able to not only diffuse the situation, but like you're protecting that guy. There's this cool movement in jiu-jitsu. Sorry, that's becoming like a jiu-jitsu podcast, but there's this cool movement in jiu-jitsu called Adopt a Cop, where they're going around and they're sponsoring police officers to take more jiu-jitsu classes, because that's the number one reason cops use excessive force, is because they don't know how to fight. They're not like good ground fighters. And so they get in a tussle with somebody, they take somebody down or trying to cuff them, but then the guy like gets away or like gets their gun or something like that, and then it turns into lethal force because they weren't a good enough fighter. It's like if you can control somebody on the ground, it actually makes it like a less dangerous situation. So there's some really cool things happening in that realm. I really spent a lot of time in the jiu-jitsu community as well. Just it's good people, man. And like you said, it's good for discipline. It's good for just kind of like centering your life a little bit. So I think every guy should do it, but I think especially kids, man. Kids can use that discipline. I know my kids could.
But since the book is doing good, seems like life is treating you good. Is there any more big things you got coming up? Like any more maybe new books you might be in the process of just skimming together? Any new events, opportunities, man? Just let the world know what's going on with you now that Bitcoin. Because when we had the first interview, Bitcoin Evangelist hadn't been released yet.
Mm-mm.
So what do we have new that you probably, because I know your brain's probably on Roto Drive and you probably already got the next few things lined up, man. But whatever you would like to release to the public.
Yeah, man. So I've got a couple books that I've got some outlines for, but I think the next thing we're going to do is, we were just talking about kids right there a second ago. My daughter, man, my daughter's 8 years old, and she's constantly, just because I think she's like, oh, my dad's writing this book on Bitcoin. And so she's trying to impress me. So she's been sitting down and like reading parts of the book. It's crazy. She's 8 years old and she's reading some of this book. And she's like asking me these really important questions about money and finance and stuff. I'm like, this is crazy. I never thought about this at 8 years old. So anyways, I was talking to her, and I think we're gonna write a follow-up book to Bitcoin evangelism for kids. It'll probably just be called Bitcoin Evangelism for Kids. And it'd just be, instead of talking about these really complicated, monetary systems and stuff like that, we'll break it down about, here's like a lemonade stand analogy for kids and stuff, So that's going to be the next thing coming out. And I want to be surprised if that's even more popular with adults, because I know for me, I like things, broken down as simple as possible. But another thing that I want to do too for your audience, I want to make sure I don't forget about this, is the first, just because talking about the Bitcoin wallet in my book and all that kind of stuff, I want everybody to be able to find it, but unfortunately only one person's going to find it. But if people can go and follow me on Twitter, my Twitter is Brian the Mint, or on Instagram, it's at Brian.Demint, DEMINT. You go DM me on either one of those, set up your Bitcoin wallet, and I'll send you your first 10,000 Satoshis. So 10,000 Satoshis, it's only a few dollars. It's just a few bits of Bitcoin. But that's the mission I'm on right now. I want people to get my book, but I also want people to just start using this technology. With Bitcoin, people get kind of nervous about it, right? Like, I don't want to spend all my money on Bitcoin. Like, what if it goes down? What if it goes up? So people get nervous about it. It's just, I say, treat it like you treated the internet. The first time you used the internet back in the day, you just sat down and you sent an email or you sent a DM to somebody or whatever it was. You just did it because it worked. And so that's the same thing with Bitcoin. Like, you don't need to think of it as this investment right now. People can just sit down and use the technology. And so I would love for your listeners to get started with Bitcoin and start. I mean, the first time you get a Bitcoin transaction, and you realize it was on a Sunday night at 8 o'clock. The banks were closed. Like there's no way you would have been able to send a payment, through your bank or anything like that. And you're actually sovereign over your own money, that you actually control 100% when, where, how you send your money. Like that's a game changing thing for people. And so anyways, have your listeners go follow me on Twitter or on Instagram and just DM me. Just say, hey, I found you, on Chicken Talk Radio, and I got my here's my Bitcoin wallet address. I will send you your first 10,000 satoshis.
And they messing around. I'm about to DM you when I get off here.
Do
Like,
it, man.
yeah,
I don't. Yeah, I appreciate you. You give me a platform. I will 100%
yeah,
do
yeah,
that.
yeah. Matter of fact, that's what I do. I'll set up my wallet and DM you as soon as it's done, and then I'm gonna make sure I get this out to all the listeners. So when I put it up, even on Instagram, I'm gonna make sure I put in the words. All the listeners that listen to this, you DM this, and you know what? It's a good opportunity because now some people would be introduced inside of the Bitcoin world.
Yep.
But man, this is crazy, man. But other than that, man, another question: which do you prefer? It's something that I heard. I don't know if you heard this. Elon Musk said something about merging NFTs and Ethereum together.
Yeah. So Ethereum is like the App Store. I don't know if I used this analogy last time that we were on, but people ask all the time, what's the difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum? Like there's 18,000 different cryptocurrencies out on the market. A lot of them are scams, and so I would say don't just go buy any cryptocurrency. But Ethereum and Bitcoin are the top two, and they're actually both really important. And they're not even competitors; they complement one another. So the example I think we used last time when I was on your show is I said, look at your iPhone or your Samsung phone, or whatever you have, and on your iPhone you have Apple Pay, and then you have the App Store. So right, Apple Pay, it's just to pay for things. The App Store is where, if you want to download Netflix or Uber or any one of the apps that you want, Spotify, you go through the App Store to do that. Those serve two different things, but they both work on your iPhone. They're two parts of the iPhone working together. Bitcoin is like payments. Ethereum is like the App Store. All the decentralized applications of the future are going to be built on top of Ethereum. That's where they're being built. NFTs are a decentralized application. So the short term for that is called a DApp. Instead of an app, it's a DApp, like a decentralized application. And so NFTs are a decentralized application. They are being built on top of Ethereum. So you can go out and buy an individual NFT. So if Ray Trax drops a new song and he turns it into an NFT, you can go buy that individual NFT. And you might just want that NFT because you like the song. You might want to buy that NFT because you're thinking it's going to go up in value, and so you're kind of speculating on it. There's that element. But if you just want to kind of have a general investment in all NFTs, then buying Ethereum would be the way to go, because that's the platform where all that stuff's built. So every time somebody sells an NFT, transfers it to somebody else, the gasoline, I'm using quotes here, the gasoline that they're using to transport that NFT across the blockchain is Ethereum. So Ethereum's coin is what's transferring that NFT around. So if you think NFTs are the wave of the future, an investment in Ethereum is kind of a good place to start. You don't have to try and guess which NFT is going to be the big winner. When you buy Ethereum, you're kind of betting on all NFTs. And there's other decentralized applications out there, not just NFTs, but I think NFTs are probably one of the more exciting ones right now. So that's why we're talking about it. But yeah, that's kind of what Ethereum means for NFTs.
Yes, man. Because it seems like NFTs is becoming big, and like you said earlier about when to invest in it, I've seen a lot of people that would talk about invest in the NFTs. Nobody wanted to believe in it. Is it fake? Is it real? And then when it jumps off, it's like, man, I should have done this a long time ago, but I didn't do it when it was accessible to me. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like NFTs is becoming the new way of the world. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But other than that, what for everybody that's reading this Bitcoin Evangelist book, a Bitcoin Evangelist for Kids, which is going to be soon, which I'm sure is going to create a lot of wealth with a lot of young people also. What is the three things that you want people who are reading this book already or about to read to take away from it?
Mhm. That's a great question. Thank you for the tee up again. So the first thing that I want anybody to understand when they're starting to, study Bitcoin and the blockchain and everything that comes along with it is to understand it as a technology first, because a lot of people get it backwards. They treat it as an investment, or like, I'm going to buy this NFT and I want to become rich overnight because I bought this NFT and then I'm going to sell it at a higher price. That's cool if that happens, but so many people lose money in this space because they don't understand it as a technology first. And so, as an example, like, look at the internet. People that understood how the internet worked in the early 1990s before everybody was using it, those people that adopted it early, those are the people that are like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and all these people that built these giant companies because they understood the technology before everybody else. So they got to be front runners in that industry. And so that's what I want people to understand right now is, if you understand the technology first, then you'll start to look for ways, like new ways maybe to apply the technology, or maybe the best places within cryptocurrency that are going to be, make the most money for you. It gives you kind of a new way to look at it before you start buying. So I think that's the most important thing. True knowledge. Here we are, like, get true knowledge on Bitcoin and blockchain first, because if you understand that technology, it makes the investing part of it just make a whole lot more sense. So I'd say that's the number one takeaway. The number two takeaway, I think you'll hear things like people say, oh, well, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, I can't hold them. There's nothing physical there. So to me, that just doesn't make sense. How could that even have value? And I would say I make a big case. There's a whole chapter devoted to why Bitcoin has value and like actual inherent value. But it's really important to understand. And probably the easiest way to understand the way that how Bitcoin has value is it's kind of like digital gold, or some people call it gold 2.0. Why does gold, and maybe nobody's, maybe some people haven't asked this question before, but why does gold have value? Like, if somebody came to you with a bar of gold and they say, hey, do you want this? You say, yeah, I would love this bar of gold. It's $100,000 worth of gold. Like, yeah, I would take that. But why does this hunk of metal have value? It has value because it's scarce, meaning there's not a lot of it. And so if you have some of it, it means there's not that many other people out there in the world that have it, because it's hard to mine. If you want to mine gold, if you want to get gold, it's in the ground. It's hard to dig up. You need a whole bunch of resources and power and tools and all this kind of stuff to get it. And so that makes it very, very valuable, and because it's scarce. Bitcoin is actually a programmed money that's scarce. It's actually more scarce than gold. There's 45 million millionaires in the world, and there's only 21 million Bitcoin, or there's only 19 million right now. There's only going to ever be 21 million Bitcoin. That means there's not even enough Bitcoin for all the millionaires to have some. So, or they'll have some, but they won't be able to have a whole Bitcoin. So for those of us that are accruing small amounts of Bitcoin right now, it means we're ahead of the game. We're getting in before the millionaires and the billionaires. Now, there are some millionaires and billionaires that have bought this stuff, but before the masses, there's only about 1% of the world that's adopted this right now. Bitcoin's at $20,000 or $21,000 because 1% of the world's adopted it. In the next 10 years, the next 90% of the world is going to adopt this technology. What does that do to the price when there's 90 times more people using this stuff than right now? So that means that every dollar that you could put into Bitcoin could be worth $90 within just a few years. And I'm not saying that that's a promise, but I'm just saying that's the kind of thinking that we have. We're in this early. So if we think of like, wow, there's not a lot of this stuff to go around, I can buy bits and pieces of it right now for relatively cheap. You're just ahead of the game. So those would be my big takeaways for the book. It's just understanding how it has value, understanding it as a technology, and then even looking for ways that you can maybe integrate this into your life. People going back to the internet analogy, somebody that maybe owned a pizza shop back in like 1998, they might say, oh, I have no need for the internet. I cook pizzas, and the internet doesn't affect my business. But the first pizza shop that started doing online ordering, they changed the game. They were ahead of every other pizza shop. They actually got an unfair advantage over every other pizza shop because now they had online ordering. So if you can figure out, you have a business, or you have a job or whatever, and you can figure out ways to apply blockchain and Bitcoin technology in ways that other people haven't figured it out yet, it gives you a head start. And so I think for a lot of artists and places where, the people that you interact with are a lot of content creators and artists, I think NFTs are a pretty cool way to do that. Because with an NFT, you can program a royalty in it so that you always get paid on it. And you know this, but a lot of your audience might not. If I'm creating a song or a piece of art, um, I can put in, say, a 5% royalty or a 10% royalty. So I don't just get paid the first time I sell that song. I get paid that 5 or 10% royalty every time the song gets sold from here on out. In the old days, if I was a painter and I painted something and I sold it for $100 because I wasn't that well known, but then say like 10 years later, I become a really famous artist, and that painting that I only sold it for $100, but now people are selling it for $1 million, $10 million. They're selling it for these obscene values. The artist only got the original $100. They didn't get anything else beyond that. But with NFTs, having a royalty programmed into that, that means that if I sold that painting for $100, yeah, I made the first $100. But now, if a few years later it sells for $10 million, that means I'm getting $1 million royalty for somebody else selling it. You don't have to do anything. That money just shows up into your wallet because it's programmed into it. So artists that are thinking in this realm of NFTs, and not just like I'm going to buy an NFT because it's going to go up in value, but thinking about I'm going to start creating NFTs and program royalties into it and creating passive streams of income. So where you just wake up in the morning and there's money in your wallet because your content is making money for you while you sleep. That changes the way that we look at money and investing and just even the way to produce things as content creators. So I think there's a lot of big implications here, and the people that take the time to study it are going to be way ahead of the game.
Yes, sir, man. This has been one hell of an interview. And I've had people already that have heard what you said and listened to this interview and are on their way to DMing you right now. So, is there a limit? Because I don't want 1,000 people out of nowhere just filling up your joint. It's like, is there a limit? The same way as one person that can get that wallet, is there like a limit where it's going to stop?
I'll
And
send it to
then
the.
before
Oh, go
and
ahead.
then after that, when it comes to getting a Bitcoin wallet, because this is for my sake and everybody else's sake, they have like apps on the app stores that let you download the Bitcoin wallet, and it comes with an address already there.
Mm-hmm.
Is that safe for them to go through that? Like
Yeah.
the apps that be on.
Yeah, you can do that. So you could download Coinbase. Like if you're going to be buying Bitcoin, you can download this one called Coinbase. That's a regulated exchange. And so when you do Coinbase, your money is kind of being held by another company, kind of like your bank. Now, if you want to hold it just by yourself, I suggest one called Blue Wallet, like the color blue, BLUE wallet. That one's free and nobody owns it but you. So if you want to just be 100% in charge of your money, that's the way I suggest going. You can buy Bitcoin through that wallet as well. But anyways, yeah, Blue Wallet is probably the one of the best ones to do.
Okay, okay. So other than that, this was a great interview, Mr. Dement. I loved it. It was excellent. We'll chat a little bit when we get off here before we go our separate ways and everything, man. But hopefully everybody's listening to this. Y'all already know where to find him, man. He gave you all of the social media sites. Go get the book Bitcoin Evangelist, available everywhere. Online, everywhere. Don't get it just because of the contest. Get it because of the content. The content's a whole lot more important. And if y'all was listening to this show, there's also special things that can happen for you for listening to this show. It can make you a couple dollars in a couple minutes. You never know, man. But this was great, and I appreciate you, Mr. Mint, for being on this show once again, man. God bless you in all the endeavors and everything that you're doing. Only thing to do is go up, and it seems like you're doing that every day, man. And like I said, man, this is Chicken Talk Radio Live, the hottest radio podcast from the East Coast. It's your boy True Knowledge without the D, knowledge is power, knowledge is me, man. We represent it, man. Love to all of y'all. Enjoy yourself, be blessed, enjoy the rest of your Sundays, man. And we out, and we'll see you on another Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Zone, 5 p.m. West Coast. Let's go.